What the hell is this thing? Hello, my name is Matt, and welcome to my hidden nerdy side, and today we're tackling this surprisingly stealthy toad, the Banderhobb. We are going to take a look at their lore, info, and abilities, and then build an encounter you can steal, modify, and plop directly into your D&D games. The goal of today's encounter is to implement a high-stakes chase scene into your game that is intense while still being fun and even full of laughs. Now, if you are well aware of the lore and mechanics behind the Banderhobb, then feel free to pop on over to the timestamp right here so you can jump straight to the encounter itself. I'll leave a clickable version in the description below. Alright, let's take a look at the Banderhobb. To make sure this video is a decent length, we'll only be pulling the Banderhobb lore, info, and abilities that exist within Volo's Guide to Monsters, all of which can be found on page 122. So Banderhobbs look like toads, but that is the extent of their relation. To quote Volo's Guide to Monsters, they are a hybrid of shadow and flesh. Basically, Banderhobbs are large toad-like creatures created through a ritual performed by powerful users of dark magic. By doing this dark ritual, the Banderhobb will serve its creator loyally in any task they require. Banderhobbs are particularly good at retrieving things, whether it's goods or people, but the task they need to perform can be whatever the magic user desires. The first Banderhobb was created by a coven of night hags, but now other dark fae, fiends, and even a few particularly nasty mages know the ritual. Banderhobbs don't last long, only several days on average, but during that time they live to serve and complete their task, which is usually their only desire. And they don't care what happens to themselves or what they have to do to others to get the job done. So you might be thinking, and rightfully so, how the hell is something this big and ugly supposed to be a sneaky, cunning thief? Well, it's easier to cover that while we break down their actions and abilities, which can also be found on page 122 of Volo's Guide to Monsters. So they have a bite and swallow ability that is rather standard. Although one noteworthy thing about the Banderhobb swallow is the necrotic damage you take with inside the Banderhobb doesn't kill you. Which makes sense since if you're going through the trouble of kidnapping someone, you don't want them to die. They also have a 15-foot long tongue they use to pull creatures closer to them. But the more interesting abilities are their Shadow Stealth, Shadow Step, and Resonant Connection. Shadow Stealth allows them to hide as a bonus action within dim light or darkness, and their Shadow Step allows them to teleport to unoccupied areas covered in dim light or darkness within 30 feet. That's right, these guys are basically bigger but slightly worse shadow monks, which is just awesome in my opinion. And if the Banderhobb isn't slippery enough, just wait until I add my homebrew touch. And finally, their Resonant Connection allows them to know the most direct route to any object or creature within 1 mile, so long as they have even a tiny piece of that creature or object. This could be a lock of hair, a fingernail, drop of blood, or whatever. So not only are they very sneaky, but they usually have no issue tracking down their targets. But of course this requires you, the Dungeon Master, to come up with a reason how the Banderhobb or its creator was able to obtain a piece of the creature or object it's after. So one thing before we begin. For this encounter, we are going to make a small but very important and frankly powerful homebrew change to the Banderhobb. And that is if they land a tongue attack, they can choose to swallow the creature on hit. Yeah. Not only does this make combat or a chase sequence more nutty, but I think it also makes sense given their toad-like appearance. Have you ever seen a frog or toad eat a fly right out of the sky? They shoot their tongue out and suck that creature right into their mouth. So that's what we're going to try and emulate here. Okay, so now that we've gone over the basic Banderhobb lore, info, and abilities, let's start crafting an encounter. This encounter/quest will be aimed at parties level 5 to 9 depending on how difficult you want to make it and last just 1 session. The party's motivation should always be tailored to the campaign, but for this encounter it's going to be pretty cut and dry since one of your player characters will be the target of the Banderhobbs. And so when one of your players gets kidnapped, you can make the proper assumption everyone else will just jump into action. So there are only 3 qualifications necessary for this encounter to work. 1. The party needs to have something that someone else wants. 2. The person who is sending the Banderhobbs either needs to know the dark ritual to summon them, or they need to know how to get someone else to do it. And 3, they need to have either a piece of one of the player characters or a piece of something one of their characters always has on them. So long as you meet those 3 requirements, you can slot this encounter in at any point during your campaign. I recommend waiting at least a few sessions just so you can begin the necessary setup. After several sessions, your party will definitely come into possession of many things, whether it be artifacts, information, gold, or whatever else that somebody other than them could want. You can also start introducing evil mages that the party might come across, or other powerful figures that have the money to hire such mages. You can also start damaging characters' goods in ways they don't think to pick up on, like, for example, chipping a splinter of wood off their quarterstaff. Or maybe a tavern waitress is paid off by a villain to seduce the party bard and pluck one of his hairs. But whatever you choose to do, whether the Banderhobbs are summoned by the big bad evil guy, a player's backstory character, or just a random side quest villain, the objective of the Banderhobbs will be to kidnap one of the player characters. This is so whoever is sending the Banderhobbs can extract information from them. What that should be is up to you. So your party will be traveling in the wilderness to their next town, and traveling through either a jungle, forest, or some area where there are many places to break line of sight, hide, and cast shadows for the Banderhobbs to slip in and out of. They will wait for the party to go to bed, and there will most likely be 1 or 2 players awake to keep watch. The Banderhobbs will sneak up and then send out a tongue attack from the bushes and trees they are hiding behind. At this point, one of your players will be pulled into the Banderhobb's mouth per our homebrew change, the Banderhobb will then shadow step away, and the chase begins. Now, if you are unfamiliar with the chase sequence rules, you can find them on pages 252 to 255 in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And as much as I bag on certain 5e supplements, I actually think all in all, the chase sequence guidelines they give are pretty good. However, one thing I personally like to do as a DM is if they take the dash action, they can choose to roll either an athletics or acrobatics check, depending on the situation. If they meet the appropriate DC, which is usually 15, but it can vary based on the terrain and circumstances, they can surpass their usual physical limits. Maybe they run an extra 10 feet, or jump over a surface that is difficult terrain, bypassing it completely. However, on the downside, if they fail miserably, usually by more than 5 or 10, then the opposite happens. This is not something you have to do, but I think it leads to some either awesome or hilarious moments. Now, the Banderhobbs will have the advantage since they get to shoot out a tongue attack from 15 feet away, shadow step 30 feet, and then run an additional 30 feet. So when the chase begins, they'll be 75 feet away from the party. There will be either 2 to 4 Banderhobbs, depending on the size and skill of your party, and since they only care about completing the mission and not their own safety, there are a ton of fun and interesting ways we can have the Banderhobbs try to prevent the party from getting their member back. The first thing I came up with was the tripwire tongue. As your party runs into the woods, a Banderhobb can be hiding behind a tree and send its tongue out to wrap around another tree. Their tongue will be near the bottom of the tree, so it's hard to see. When a party member runs past, they need to make a DC 15 dexterity saving throw or trip over the tongue and fall prone. Another fun impediment could be the tongue pullback. Let's say your paladin is running after the Banderhobb who has their fellow party member. What if one of the other Banderhobbs makes a tongue attack, swallows the paladin, and then shadow steps away, now putting an additional 45 feet of distance between the paladin and their party member? Another particularly cruel trap could be what I call the bomb belly. Let's say one of your party members is carrying a torch. And let's say that person is the paladin we spoke of. What if the paladin is hit with a tongue attack and yanked into the Banderhobb's belly? And that Banderhobb's belly is full of dynamite. And what if we say that silly paladin's torch accidentally ignites the dynamite? And now they have one turn to escape the Banderhobb's belly or accidentally blow themselves up. Another thing you could do would be to add some ledges the party needs to jump down from or climb up. And what if one of the ledges they needed to jump down from had a Banderhobb with its mouth wide open waiting to swallow whoever doesn't jump far enough? And the beauty of all of this is the Banderhobb is able to shadow step or hide as a bonus action, meaning after they trigger their trap, they can just teleport out of the way and get themselves ready to lay the next trap, causing an infinite number of shenanigans to throw at your party. And if your party manages to stop the Banderhobb carrying their party member, they can just regurgitate them and have another Banderhobb take them. And with all the swallowing of players, tripping with tongues, giant toads teleporting from tree to tree, not only will it create an intense chase sequence, but the sheer absurdity will surely keep your players entertained and laughing all the way. So, an engaging chase encounter filled with tons of silly traps and surprises, while still being suspenseful and easily tossed into any storyline you need it to? I think this encounter is already quite spicy enough. However, if we wanted to, how could we make it even spicier? Well, what if you place a number of thick tree branches with vines the players could swing from? And the Banderhobbs, well, they could just shoot out their tongue and swing from branch to branch, creating an even wackier chase sequence. You could also give them minor spells. I wouldn't go nuts, but what if they had spells like Minor Illusion, so they could create noises in different areas that would confuse the party as to where the Banderhobbs were heading? And finally, what if the Banderhobbs didn't head straight to where they were taking the player, but instead took some time to rest, allowing the party to reclaim their fellow member and possibly ensue another chase sequence, but one where the Banderhobbs are now the pursuers? But of course, these are just some of the many ways you can use Banderhobbs in your Dungeons & Dragons campaign. There are tons of different ways to take this encounter and spice it up, so please let me know what you would do in the comment section below so I can nerd out over it and smack myself in the head for not thinking of it. Also, let me know if there are any creatures that you would like me to build an encounter for in my future videos. I'm going to try and put out at least one of these videos a week, so feel free to subscribe and share this video around if you liked it, and stay tuned for upcoming content. Thanks for watching and indulging my hidden nerdy side.